Welcome to the Upfront Podcast, where you get your weekly dose of upfront discussions with people from all around the world. My guest today is Sharona Shnayder, who's originally from Laos in Nigeria. She moved to Portland, Oregon in the US at the age of 8. At the age of 21, she decided to move to Israel. She co-founded Tuesdays for Trash, a global grassroots movement, mobilizing communities to help clean the environment and raising awareness and educate about climate urgency. Sharona is a climate activist and also the chairwoman of our Streets PDX. We are speaking about what we should want to achieve for our planet, how we can all contribute to save our only home, and what the correlation between privilege and the climate crisis is.
Hi, Nina. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. So please tell me about yourself.
So, I'm Sharona. I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, till I was 8 years old. After that, I moved to America, specifically Portland, Oregon. And then I spent most of my life there till I was 21 before moving to Israel and making Aliyah. And the entire journey has been kind of crazy. A lot of people hear my story and they're like, oh, that's like, how did you go through all of that? And it wasn't easy, but it definitely, all of the challenges and things that I went through made me into the person I am now. And it's very much attributed to the things that I've been successful at and what I've decided to focus on in my life. And one of those things is Tuesdays for Trash, a global grassroots movement that I started in 2020 with a friend of mine. And the initiative is to encourage everyone around the world to dedicate at least one day a week for the planet by picking up trash and mobilizing communities to fight for a cleaner and healthier environment for everyone on this planet through raising awareness about the trash problem that we're seeing all around the world. And most of the time I spend just focusing on that, organizing the movement and trying to actually make a difference in the ways that I can. And just trying to really live despite all of the challenges and crises that we're currently facing. I just really want to be able to look back and see that I've made a difference in my local community and also maybe in the world, because it's just really daunting thinking about the future that is shaping out to be right now if things don't change. And so if I'm able to contribute even a little bit to lessen the consequences for myself or people who are suffering right now, then I feel like I'll have succeeded. My main focus is climate because it encompasses everything. It's so prevalent in all issues that we face around the world. And it's what's at the end of the day going to matter the most, because if we don't have a planet, then no other problem matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you feel like so many individuals, not only citizens, but also politicians, don't seem to realize the urgency for change in our behavior?
I think that really depends on who you ask, because if you were to ask someone living in an island nation in the Pacific, they do know and they are talking about it and they are actively doing something about it because it's affecting their everyday lives. But if you were to ask someone maybe in America or a more developed nation, then they're going to say that they have other things to do, or it's an inconvenience for them, or someone else will handle it because it's not their problem. They didn't affect it or create the larger issue. But that's where we really see the disparity, because it is people in more developed regions that have to step up and decide to make a difference and be a part of the fight, because they're the ones with the resources and the networks and honestly the privilege to be able to do something that helps people who are actively suffering and having their entire lifestyles and livelihoods altered survive.
So what do you feel like individuals can do? I mean, you just mentioned that you do dedicate one day a week to going around picking up trash and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What does that usually entail for you? Do you just go to local parks, or what does that look like?
The idea of Tuesdays for Trash is to create kind of a routine that consistently reminds you there's a problem and you can be a part of the solution. So it's not just to stop at picking up trash, but it's kind of an introduction into activism in a way, and really getting you to realize how easy it is to just join in and contribute, even if it's in a small way. For me, I was whenever I participate with Tuesdays for Trash, it's just a part of my daily routine. I just pack a pair of gloves, and whenever I'm walking somewhere, whether it's to work, to the beach, or just sitting in a spot and I notice there's like a wrapper next to me, I pick it up. It
Mm.
doesn't really have to be something that's like, oh, I'm going out of my way to like spend an hour cleaning up this entire park and then sharing it with everyone. I most of the time don't even talk about it because it's just so simple to see trash and pick it up and then you're done. And people around you see you doing it and they notice and they tell people. And like it's kind of a trigger for them, like a social signaling that, oh, they're doing this. Why am I not doing this? And it could be just so easy like that. So I think like the best way to encourage people to join and contribute to this climate crisis in a positive way is by talking about the issue, finding out what ways your expertise, your networks can help further, like in creating a healthier and like more sustainable future, if it's locally or on a global level, and then actually sitting down and like planning how you're going to do that. Because it's one thing to say that you're going to become part of the fight and actually want a future, and there's also another thing as to like deciding to integrate it into your life and actually making those changes.
So you do believe that it starts with like the individual citizen?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it really has to come from individuals because, yes, the big corporations are contributing the most to the problem, but
Hmm.
they're only running and fueled based on our decisions and our demand. So if a bunch of people are demanding change, then they're going to have to change whether they like it or not. But if the only like one big corporation changes, then it kind of turns into a different corporation becoming the monopoly. And so that's why a lot of people are scared to make these like drastic changes because they don't know how the market's going to react and they feel like they're just disservicing their company, as opposed to if like everyone decided that we needed to be sustainable and wouldn't purchase from them at all, then it's more their advantage to change.
What do you believe is like the biggest impact in like our everyday life on the climate? What makes the biggest like negative impact on it?
This one's kind of controversial, but I think
Hmm.
honestly having children, because at least for me and a lot of people that I know in this activism space for climate justice, we're very hesitant about the idea of bringing a child into this world. Number one, because there's so many kids out there who do need a family, that are in foster homes and like waiting to be adopted, but also because bringing a child comes with a lot of emissions and impacts on our environment. And everyone likes to argue, well, you could be introducing like the person to save us. But in reality, at this point, they're not going to reach an age where they would be able to like have the not only the knowledge but the power to lead an entire nation out of entire not even entire nation entire world out of this climate crisis. So it's really irrational to think like that. And for me, I can't imagine looking my child in the eye and being like, yeah, I brought you into this world not knowing if you would have a future or not. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's a very tricky one. Do you believe governments should intervene in that regard?
I don't think the government should intervene because we're already seeing the pattern changing on its own. Like the more people become educated, especially women, the more they decide not to have children of their own just because they understand like what the burden is in that sense. And like mothers are very keen on not seeing their children suffer. So it's like more of a logical decision not to have children right now. We just need more education on how severe this climate emergency is becoming.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I also think it would be very tricky, tricky to say the least, but
Yeah,
it kind of would side like towards a dictatorship. I think if you would like oblige
definitely.
people to like stick to a one child rule or whatever, but it definitely makes sense like how you explain it, and I do agree with that statement that it is yeah, usually done out of like thoughtlessness, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, because what if you can't provide a future for the many children that you potentially bring into the world?
I feel like they don't think about what they're doing. It's just like, oh, we need to make sure that we have like we continue to support our community and like I don't even really understand it. Like I really don't get it, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I also think what I've recently read was a study that overpopulation, which is now the case, we're at a breaking point where it also becomes like scientifically, not only for the climate, but for people's direct health. Like this pandemic could also be traced back to being overpopulated because viruses can
Hmm.
spread more. There's more poverty, a bigger gap in between rich and very, very poor, and all that follows too. obviously it's a big factor in that decision, I think, but also, yeah, all the rest that follows too.
Absolutely. And it's definitely like climate change has played a role in the pandemic for sure, because the more we've encroached on these animals' habitats, then we increase the risk and the chance of contracting these diseases and spreading it very quickly.
And also, I guess what comes along with that, speaking of the US actually, is healthcare issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? Alongside other
Yeah.
things, but obviously in some countries that don't have a very good healthcare system, I think that is showing that there's a lot of issues.
Definitely. And when you factor waste into that as well, like it becomes even worse, because the
Hmm.
more trash and waste we see in communities, like the increased risk of diseases and like rodents coming in and spreading different things that are already like risky for like the average community. But then if it's a low income, marginalized community having to face that, it becomes an even harder struggle.
So, speaking of your background a bit and your upbringing and your story, how did these moves affect you? So, from Nigeria, you moved to the US. How did that
Mm-hmm.
affect you? I guess that was a bit of a culture shock, right?
Oh, that isn't, yeah, culture shock doesn't even begin to describe the feeling. It was like it was like a slap in the face, to be honest, because I'd grown up watching all of these movies, really romanticizing life in America, thinking it was just going to be like all rose-colored glasses. Everything was going to be like free and exciting. And it was the complete opposite, to be quite honest. Like, I remember my first experience. And it happened to be my first struggle as well, was I was entering elementary school and I'd finished third grade. I was supposed to be going into fourth grade. And because I was younger than everyone else, the administration wanted to put me back into third grade, even though I'd already learned all the information and was ready for fourth. I was like,
Hmm.
why is me being more advanced than like your average student a disservice to myself? Like, why does that hold me back when it should be an asset and I should like be advantaged in that sense? And just because I was coming from Africa too, they expected that I didn't learn like up to par with the same material, and it was very just shocking to me in that sense. But another aspect that like I really didn't comprehend until I moved to America was how little I had in Nigeria. Like, I was very content as a child. I had a very good childhood and lifestyle there. Like, I felt very happy and like I had everything I needed. But moving to America, I realized, wow, like people here have all these resources and options, and like their power stays on 24/7, and you can get access to clean water very easily, and like extreme weather events like flash floods don't happen here often. And I was like, how did I it was very crazy to see the contrast, and also how much people wasted. Like in Nigeria, I had to keep everything until its very last bit, like it was shredding or like it was very clearly in need of replacement. But here, people replace things left and right, and they use things just until the new thing comes out, even if it's not broken. And that was very foreign to me.
Yeah, I guess if you don't have an amazing amount of like great infrastructure, then you focus more on the essentials. Whereas if you already live
Mm-hmm.
in like a very consumerist culture, develop infrastructure and all of that, I guess you focus less on what it is that you already have, like what you do have.
Yeah, and you try and like expand on that. Like when you live in
Mm.
an affluent society, like take Sweden, then you have more chances and opportunities to tackle other things, like say climate change. Everyone wonders why these European countries are so advanced with like the recycling and how their way of living, and it's because they already have all their immediate needs met. Like they have clean access to drinking water, they have roofs over their heads, like they're not facing extreme weather event after extreme weather event, at least not to the extent that people in Africa are. And so they have time to focus on climate change. And it's like, we really need to create more opportunities and like distribute more resources to these developing nations that are facing like the most severe impacts of the climate crisis, which they had very little to do with causing in the first place. And yet
Hmm.
people just aren't even like willing to help. And I don't understand that.
Yeah, and also I feel like a lot of like millions of people do live like on the continent of Africa, like all together, but
Mhm.
yet it's still kind of largely ignored. Yeah, it's unbelievable, really. Like, I don't understand it either.
So ignored. It's like
Hmm.
not even, it's like it's shockingly ignored. And I think one reason is because if you actually go in and look at what's happening in Africa, there's a lot of innovation and like people coming up with really cool and significant ways to tackle the problems that they're facing. But no one talks about it in the media because I think they're very scared of introducing the idea of like people of color, especially like African people leading in this like fight for a future, because for so long it's been non-people of color, like white European leaders leading on climate justice, and not only climate justice as well in a lot of other spaces. And I really think that our media especially is afraid of changing the narrative and what people would say and how it would affect views. And we've seen that happen time and time again, just white saviorism being propagated in our media. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think it ultimately goes back to like racist ideologies?
I think so. And there's a lot of information on like how the climate crisis is disproportionately affecting people of color and indigenous peoples. Like the indigenous people are caretakers of more than 80% of biodiversity on this planet, yet they don't really receive a lot of recognition or funding for their communities. And it's crazy that like these people are literally like single-handedly, protecting most of our biodiversity, and we're not giving them any credit or funding or supporting their initiatives.
Hmm.
And yet they still do it. Why? Because it's like they understand the gravity of the situation. It's crazy that non-people of color are so quick to ignore the crisis because it's inconvenient for them, or it doesn't seem like a direct issue because they're not facing it every day like people in vulnerable communities and frontline communities are.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's also kind of paradox that a lot of like what I'd say the Western world, so speaking of especially the United States and I guess Europe, is a
Mm-hmm.
big contributor to like those landfills, like those mountains of
Mm-hmm.
clothing and all these products or whatever that they just like throw away, does end up in like countries that don't have the resources to actually deal with the impact that
Right.
especially like exactly those landfills have. It's very weird to me.
Yeah, like oftentimes these countries will also ship their waste to
Mhm.
underdeveloped regions and pay them just to have it stored in their country. And they can do that because those countries need the money, and it takes care of the problem for the developed nations. But then what do you do about the communities and the like local people having to face all of this trash just swathing through their rivers and systems whenever an extreme weather event happens and takes it from the landfill into the water system, and then brings in diseases that are like affecting the community. And it's just that no one thinks about it. No one is proactive about this climate crisis. Our leaders aren't thinking about it in the sense of like long-term effects. And that's the main reason we're seeing them being so hesitant at just ending the coal industry right now. We don't need coal. People are worried about what's going to happen in the short term, but we have to think about long term how we're going to survive.
And long term doesn't even have to be like 150 years from now. It could be 10 years, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
10 years from now, we're going to see like almost irreversible consequences happen from the climate crisis if we do nothing. If business as usual continues, like it's going to be something that we have no choice but to take action on. And I'm scared of getting to that point because when we get to that point, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be left out because we have to act very quickly, and only those that can afford to like be saved will be saved.
What do you think was the most difficult for you specifically? Like the fact that you were an immigrant, a female, as a Jew, or as a Black person, or because of your home country, like your country of origin? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think was the most difficult for you there?
In America, I would say being an
Hmm.
immigrant, just because the Trump administration really made that more difficult than it was.
Hmm.
And also, being an immigrant came with a lot of disadvantages and setbacks. Like, I didn't qualify for a lot of grants and funding, and there were a lot of things that weren't accessible for me because I wasn't like necessarily a citizen in their system. It really made me feel unwelcomed, and that's the main reason I left, is that I didn't think I would ever feel comfortable in America, or that people wanted me there, at least like not the government. And there's something about being in Israel now and like having that support and community. People I don't even know, random strangers, will show you that love and that care. And it's simply because you're the fact that I am an immigrant, because everyone here pretty much is an immigrant. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful that I can be here and feel so immediately safe and welcomed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Could you ever like imagine yourself moving back to Nigeria now that you've experienced it very differently, as you mentioned, like with like electricity and like running water and all these like luxury things that you have now? Could you ever picture
Mm-hmm.
yourself moving back?
I thought about it, and I think I made that decision when I came to Israel that I wasn't willing to go back to Nigeria. I actually hadn't been back in 13 years until this past Christmas. And when I tell you, after I stepped off the plane, I was like, what am I doing? Because it's so apparent how underdeveloped it is there. Like, I looked at the sky and I couldn't even see past like it was very hard to see like beyond horizons, and there was so much trash and litter everywhere. There was beggars on the street, and the equity gap was very noticeable. And even people at the airport were like asking for like bribes and things, and like cutting the lines, and like literally committing like felonies. And I was just very overwhelmed by everything. Nigeria has turned into a very corrupt country, to be quite honest. And there is a lot of beauty and family and community there that I really cherish and love. And like, I have a lot of very good memories of my childhood in Nigeria. But to be honest, I don't think it's somewhere I would ever want to live long term, especially because it's so hard to gain access to resources that you need. Like, our compound that we live in is guarded by armed guards because it's such a huge security issue there. And like having clean drinking water, like you have to drink out of these little like packets or like buy water bottles. And my heart kind of broke. I like really recognized my privilege, because I was like, wow, like I have to drink out of plastic water bottles now. I can't like just drink from the tap. And I was like, dude, at least I have clean drinking water. I like was really recognizing that there are a lot of things I'm privileged to have in Israel and when I was in America that people here just don't have access to.
What was it like for you in Nigeria being like part of the Jewish minority?
So honestly, I grew up Christian.
Oh, okay.
I've been Christian most of my life, and it wasn't until I moved to Israel that I actually got more introduced into Judaism and the culture here. And I don't know, I tried to learn more about it, but it just didn't feel as comfortable as like being Christian does for me. Not that like it's really that easy of a choice, but I don't know, I aligned more with the Christian faith, and it feels like familiar to me, and so it's kind of what my faith is right now.
So you had actually converted to Judaism?
No, no, no. I was like going to synagogue and like trying to like learn, because I had never really understood just how it was different from Christianity, because there are a lot of similarities. But after like kind of giving it like a test run, I decided it wasn't really for me.
Oh, I understand. So you were actually like brought up Jewish, but like not like really within the Jewish community or like living with like all these like Jewish traditions and all that.
I was not. I was brought up Christian, and it's actually like really sad because my dad is Jewish. And I didn't like by religion and also by ethnicity. Like, I'm Jewish by ethnicity, not religion. But my dad is fluent Hebrew, and he never taught us kids anything, which is such a disservice now that I moved to Israel. And it wasn't until like about 3 years ago that I found out he's also Jewish by religion, even though he would go to church with us every Sunday. Like, he really sacrificed that just for the sake of my mom, which was so weird and interesting at the same time.
Mm.
But yeah, he never talked about Israel or Judaism ever with us. And I don't really know why, but yeah.
Do you think it might have to do with like sort of quote unquote like forced assimilation in the diaspora? Because I feel like that's what a lot of us Jews do. We sort of try
Oh,
to blend in, right?
absolutely. Wait, now that you put a name to it, that's exactly what he was doing. Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. And I appreciate it in some ways, but in a lot of other ways, I'm like really upset that he felt uncomfortable being like his true self.
Did your parents move with you?
To Israel, no. So it was actually just me. I'm here all by myself. It's okay.
Aw,
I'm
good for
fine.
you.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to be out of America. That's the best part.
So your parents stayed there.
My dad did, and my older sister is also in America. My mom never left Nigeria, so she's always been there. And my two younger siblings go to school in Ghana.
When we actually met, you had told me that you wanted to get into politics. Can you tell me what
Mm-hmm.
made you decide to go down that path?
Yeah, I guess decide isn't exactly the right word. It's more of like I feel uh, called to it, but also sort of like it's my only option in the sense that I've been talking about climate issues for so long that it's become really frustrating to see that no one is actually working on the things that need to be done or treating it like the emergency it is. And so at this point, I'm really just willing to do it myself. Because if our leaders aren't going to take action, then I think they need to step down and give their seat at the table to people who are, because we don't have a lot of time. And I feel very capable of making the right decisions and consulting with the right people and understanding the impact it has on various communities and making sure that we treat it in a just and equitable way. And it's really not that hard. It's like stop accepting money from fossil fuel industries and actually do your job. Um, and
Mm.
understand like how we can use uh, peace on the climate issues to bridge peace on other issues, because it's, like I said, very prevalent in every problem that we face on this planet. So if we can all come together and fix this problem, I think all other problems will follow suit.
How do you think Israel is doing now in terms of addressing the climate issue at large?
I think honestly, Israel's doing pretty well and making a lot of strides, because just last year, the president, for the first time, declared the climate crisis an emergency, which is really big. And they're putting like billions in funding for startups innovating in climate. And I think that we're becoming more aware of it in terms of climate legislation too. Like there's a lot of plastic bans going into effect. Our environmental minister is doing a lot of important and great work that's being widely shared and discussed in the political system. And also the political system we have is leaning more towards climate action too. So there's a lot of opportunity. And honestly, if there's one country that's going to lead and have the most sustainable, almost utopian society in terms of climate change, I think it's going to be Israel, because we're so small that we can really get everyone on board and show the rest of the world how it's done, like we did with COVID, being like one of the first countries to have nearly everyone vaccinated. And we've learned how to get people on board and like convince them to do what's best for their future long term. And with climate change, it's all about communicating in the right ways and showing people how it's benefiting them, and then making it easy for them to join in.
Don't you think, speaking of the pandemic and people, let's call it following the governments and the science behind it,
Yeah.
um, don't you think that it has to do with people trusting the government here more because they have to sort of rely on it? Do you have to trust our government more to be able to protect us, and therefore we're more willing to believe in them?
That's honestly very true. I think that the government in Israel has proven to be very effective in a lot of different situations, and the climate crisis is one that just kind of fits in as well. It's not the science is very foolproof, and it's even something that you can see happening. Like we've had such a crazy winter in Israel. Like got so cold in Tel Aviv for the first time, and like this is not normal. A lot of people were saying. And so it's not something that is inherently unthinkable. Like people know climate change is happening and the science is true. And so it's just about trusting that your government is going to make the right decisions for you, and ensure that you are able to have a future on this planet.
I do have to say, though, I find Israel is doing a terrible job at recycling.
Oh, dude, that's
Horrible.
the thing is, no, okay, so I'm with you. The thing with recycling, it's not just Israel, it's everywhere around the globe. And the main issue with that is that there's a statistic where it says only 9% of plastic you recycle actually gets recycled. So the other 90% just goes back into the landfill. And the reason is because the systems haven't been updated in at least 10 years, most of them. And in order to recycle things, you have to have a person on the other end who's going to take that recycling and manufacture it into something else. But the issue is that most manufacturers would rather use virgin plastic because it's cheaper and it's also more durable. So if you don't have someone who is closing the loop, then the whole process is inefficient and doesn't make any sense. And that's why we need to push people to reduce waste instead of focusing on recycling.
But then I think, like, I do agree with you about the plastic issue generally, because I saw that, like, Greenpeace actually posted a really, really good informative video, like, 2 days ago or something, where it addresses, like, how much of, like, what we recycle actually still lands up, well, eventually in our bodies, because we
Yeah.
consume it through, like, water, air, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And only, like, a very, very small percentage is actually recycled and reused
Yeah.
in one form or another. That's the other thing. Like, I can't find a
Mm-hmm.
store that sells water in like glass bottles.
Right. Yeah, there's not a lot of reuse shops in Tel
Mhm.
Aviv, which is strange because there's a very big vegan community here and we're sustainable in other ways. But like when it comes to reuse, that's not something that is very common. And in fact, using plastic is super common in Israel. It's like
Mhm.
very almost culturally like it's almost a cultural thing, especially in religious
Mhm.
communities. Like you if you don't have plastic in your home, it's like, what are you doing? And if you're not using plastic for like every like family meal, it's like, wow, this is a lot of effort for you to have to clean up afterwards. So it's very much become a convenience thing for that cultural aspect of life, and we need to
Mhm.
really change the narrative on it because it's becoming a huge problem. The Mediterranean is one of the most like plastic filled bodies of water in the world, and we wonder why. It's the way that people are living here and how it's flowing into our systems and affecting our ecosystems.
Definitely. I was shocked at the amount of stores that I saw that were just for like single-use plastic.
And the funny thing is, plastic didn't always used to be the single use item. It was made into single use solely for the business and like capitalist side of things. Like before, people would save plastic and reuse it all the time. Like they actually had to make advertisements to show people how to dispose of plastic and be like, no, you use this once and then you throw it away. And because why would you? You know, like it doesn't make any sense to create something that's going to last 450 years and be this really durable material to use only once for literally like 10 minutes. It just rationally, it doesn't make any sense.
What would you personally like suggest that people could do if they don't have like an alternative to buying stuff wrapped in plastic, or if they can only buy like water in plastic bottles? What would you like recommend for those people? Something like that they could actually do
Yeah.
within their means or whatever to make an impact.
Yeah, it's tough because a lot of the times your only option is plastic. Like when I was in Nigeria, I didn't really have any other option. But for me, I think like the important thing is trying to figure out how many ways you can repurpose that item. So if it's a plastic bottle, then like maybe you cut it up and turn it into something else, like a little pot for plants, or just reusing that plastic bottle a few times if you can with like filtered water. And I also think that just in general, we can talk about the issue. Like if you're going to a restaurant and they're always putting a plastic straw in your drink, even though you don't ask for it, tell them. Be like,
Hmm.
hey, number one, I didn't ask for this. I think only disabled people should be given the straw without asking. And also, it saves the business money if they're not giving a straw to every customer that walks in if they don't need one. It's kind of common sense, but a lot of us are too scared to say anything. I don't know why we're so scared. I think it's like society has made us really reserved in that sense. Like it's taboo almost to say anything.
Or then you're like being labeled as, I don't know, whatever kind of
Or
like
extra,
derogatory term. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And it's not, I'm not being extra. You know, I'm like thinking rationally and I'm being aware of the situation and actually doing something about it. It's not extra to care about having a future that's not filled with plastic and having to struggle through, you know, like
Yeah.
it's basic.
Hmm.
So
So if you could change one thing wherever in the world it would be, what would it be?
I think our leaders. Like I look at the people I surround myself with, especially in this
Hmm.
climate movement, and they're all from very diverse backgrounds. Especially like the people of color I know leading this movement. Like they're so inspirational and like they're really giving their all to finding a solution and working towards a sustainable future for everyone on this planet. And if we could just have those people get a seat at the table where it really matters and have their voices heard and officiate the decisions that we need to make in the next few years, we would be in such an amazing place. And I don't know, like we need to stop being afraid of change, and especially when it's something as important as our future, we have to start changing. So, yeah, leadership would be awesome.
So can you tell me a bit more about what your organization exactly does? So you mentioned Cleanup Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so every Tuesday, Tuesdays for Trash, the movement encourages people to go out and show like their community, their environment, and just the people around them how easy it is to be a part of the solution. And so the idea is really to create an opportunity for you to not only step into the world of activism, specifically climate activism, but also to recognize the power you have as an individual to make a change and signal to others that something is wrong and we can be a part of the solution. And so our platform serves as a way to educate people, get them involved, mobilize, and also just generally advocate for what we need to see happen in the next few years. And I really hope that it's an opportunity to create local heroes because that's how I think we're going to see the most change happen, not with just one person. Like, not no hate for Greta. Like I love her and I love everything she's done. She's been a huge inspiration for me. But I think having like idols like that does us no good in the climate movement. It should really be about highlighting everyone that's doing important work and uplifting all communities, especially small ones that are on the front lines. And creating those local heroes is going to help us to make the most change, I think. I really want people to start talking about this, and the
Hmm.
more we talk about it, I think the more we realize people around us also care. Because for me, like what really made me confident in starting not only the movement but becoming the leader I have been in the climate world is through talking to people who I didn't know cared as much as I do, but coincidentally like share the same values of wanting a healthier future and were willing to support me when I was burnt out and provided me with networks and resources and really advocated on my behalf, like saying my name in rooms where it mattered. So the more you talk about it and the more you brand yourself as someone who cares, I think the more doors open and you really begin to see like the power that your voice can have.
And I think it also helps, like personally, to feel that there are people who do care. So you're not
Yeah,
alone in this. You do see that
yeah,
change is probably or eventually at some point going to come, and it does empower you in a way, I think.
definitely. I agree. Yeah.
Hmm. I think it's really important that it is talked about openly and people are maybe even made aware of like the emergency of it.
Yeah, I think that's like one thing that is also a problem. Your only climate education is like, oh, reusable light bulbs or like LED light bulbs and take shorter showers and that's it. And I was like, what is going on? I thought all we had to do was take shorter showers. Like, I didn't understand the gravity of the situation until I like started listening and doing my own research. I was like, no one is talking about this. Like, we need to be freaking out. This is crazy. Um,
Yeah,
and it came
definitely.
from a place of fear. Really, it was like me being so scared and terrified. It was like, I can't just not do anything. I can't just sit by and watch this happen.
Mm. Do you think it is too late to like reverse it in a way?
Yes. I think it's too late to avoid most of the consequences,
Mm.
but at the end of the day, we can still lessen it at least, like give us more time so that we can innovate a way to drastically reduce the impact and the effect of climate change. Because right now, we really don't have the mechanisms to do it in a way that's going to avoid the most severe consequences. But if we start working towards it now, I have a lot of hope that we will get to a point before it's too late that we come up with something. It really just matters on like how quickly we decide to make this emergency a priority. And that's why I'm also trying to like really like see and live as much as I can right now while it's possible, because even with the pandemic, like scientists are finding that the Arctic ice is melting a lot quicker, and as it's melting, they're finding different diseases and like things trapped in the permafrost, and they're things that they've never seen before. It's like bigger than the COVID pandemic right now. And everyone's really terrified of what's going to happen in the next few years if like something as small as COVID, it like really wreaks havoc as it has on our planet. We're not going to stand a chance, which is so sad. But it's like, it's the reality we're seeing. Like, it's crazy. Oregon reached 160 degrees over the summer. That's like hotter than the Sahara Desert. And the infrastructure is it's not built for that. Like the streetcar cable lines were melting. They had to open up cooling centers for the homeless people, and it was just not normal. And yet this happened and is going to continue to keep happening because the climate is just baked into these changes that we're going to see for at least the next 10 years. Even if we stop climate change right now, it's like already been set in motion. The reason I keep going is like, I'd rather just look back and say I did everything I could. At least I can be happy knowing that I tried.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Upfront Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss out on any new episodes. We will be back next week.